A grand display the void around Kepler Station shimmered as reality tore open like silk. From the brilliant rift emerged the pride of the stellar hegemony, a fleet so magnificent that starlight itself seemed to bow in reverence. Each vessel was a work of art, crystalline hulls that caught and amplified the distant sun's rays into dazzling rainbows of light. Energy cascaded along their surfaces in patterns that spoke of ancient power and technological supremacy. High, Archon Vextar stood upon the command platform of his flagship, the luminous eternity, his 6 arms spread wide in a gesture of absolute confidence. His species, the Veltar, had ruled the galaxy's eastern spiral for over 3 millennia. Their ships were legends, beautiful, deadly, and utterly superior to anything the younger races could produce. Magnificent, is it not? Vextar's voice resonated through the crystalline chamber, each word echoing with harmonics that spoke of authority. His 4 eyes, each a different shade of blue, gazed upon his fleet with undisguised pride. 47 vessels of pure artistry, each one capable of glassing a world, yet beautiful enough to grace the halls of the great archive. War Prime Kreldok, his second in command, bowed his massive frame in agreement. The humans will be properly awed, High Archon. They're primitive. Metal boxes cannot compare to our sublime craft. The hegemony fleet arranged itself in the traditional formation of dominance, a complex 3-dimensional mandala that demonstrated not only their tactical prowess, but their cultural sophistication. Each ship moved with ballet-like precision, energy weapons creating intricate light shows between them. Plasma streams arced in perfect geometric patterns, while force fields rippled in waves of color that could be seen from light years away. It was theater. It was art. It was a demonstration of power that had brought dozens of species to their knees in willing submission. Vextar had studied these humans extensively. They were a young race, barely 3 centuries into their spacefaring age. Their ships were crude, utilitarian things, metal boxes with engines strapped to them. No artistry, no elegance, no understanding of the deeper principles that separated civilization from barbarism. Contact approaching, High Archon, announced the sensor operator, her voice carrying the musical tones of the Veltar language. Single, vessel, human designation, UN's whisper. Vextar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Even their ship names lacked grandeur. Display it. The view screen shimmered, revealing a vessel that confirmed every prejudice Vextar held. The human ship was a simple gray rectangle, perhaps 200 meters long, with no visible weapons, no energy signatures worth mentioning, and absolutely no aesthetic appeal. It looked like a cargo hauler that had lost its way. That is their diplomatic vessel? Kreldok's voice carried barely concealed contempt. It appears they have sent us a freighter. Perhaps they seek to surrender before we even begin, Vextar mused, his 4 eyes narrowing. Open communications. The human who appeared on screen was equally unremarkable. Captain Sarah Morrison wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decorations. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her green eyes held an expression of polite curiosity rather than the awe Vextar expected. "Greetings," she said in accented galactic standard. "I'm Captain Morrison of the United Nations." Ship whisper. "We've come to observe your fleet demonstration as requested." Vextar spread his arms wider, allowing the camera to capture the full majesty of his command center. Behind him, holographic displays showed the intricate dance of his fleet, each vessel trailing energy like a comet. "Welcome, human. I am High Archon Vextar of the stellar hegemony. What you witness today is the culmination of 3,000 years of naval evolution. Each of these vessels represents perfection in form and function." Captain Morrison nodded politely. "They're quite impressive. Very shiny." The response caught Vextar off guard. Shiny? That was her assessment of the greatest naval force in known space? Perhaps, he said, recovering his composure, you would care to witness a demonstration of their capabilities? That would be educational, thank you. Educational. Not awe-inspiring, not magnificent, educational. Vexstar felt his confidence waver for just a moment before reasserting itself. Clearly, these humans simply lacked the sophistication to properly appreciate what they were seeing. Very well, observe. At his command, the hegemony fleet began its most spectacular routine. The cascade of infinite light saw each vessel discharge its weapons in sequence, creating a flowing river of energy that stretched across space. Plasma. Cannons painted the darkness with streams of superheated matter, while particle beams traced geometric patterns of lethal beauty. The demonstration culminated with the luminous eternity itself, firing its prime weapon, a beam of pure coherent energy that could slice through a moon. The lance of light struck a nearby asteroid, and for a moment a new star blazed in the darkness before fading to cooling debris. Remarkable, Captain Morrison said, and Vexstar preened until she continued. Your energy efficiency must be terrible. Though, all that light and heat means you're bleeding power into space instead of concentrating it on target. The comment hit like a physical blow. I what? Oh, don't misunderstand me, Morrison said quickly. It's absolutely beautiful. Like fireworks, very ceremonial. Ceremonial. Fireworks. Vexstar's 4 eyes blazed with indignation. Perhaps you would care to demonstrate your own fleet's capabilities, human. Well, we only brought the one ship today, but ... double quotes. Morrison paused, seeming to listen to something off-screen. Actually, Admiral Chun says we can show you a few things. Fair warning, though, our approach is a bit different. Different how? We don't really go in for the light shows. Bit of a waste of energy, if you ask me. Before Vexstar could respond, his sensor operator's voice cut through the bridge with undisguised alarm. Hi, Archon. Multiple contacts emerging. From stealth, I count ... 17 ... No, 20-3 ... The signatures keep multiplying. The main display shifted, and Vexstar felt his confidence shatter like crystal struck by a hammer. Space around them, which moments before had been empty save for his own magnificent fleet, now swarmed with human vessels. They hadn't emerged from hyperspace or dimensional rifts. They had simply stopped hiding. These weren't crude metal boxes. They were predators made manifest in steel and ceramic. Each vessel was a study in lethal efficiency, angular and brutal, with no wasted space or decorative elements. Their hulls were the deep black of the void itself, seeming to swallow light rather than reflect it. How long have they been there? Vexstar whispered. Unknown, High Archon. Our sensors detect no energy signatures from their engines, no weapon emissions, no communications traffic. They're ... silent. Captain Morrison's voice drew his attention back to the communication screen. Sorry about that. The Admiral wanted to make sure our full escort was present before we began. You understand, diplomatic protocol and all. Your escort? Oh, yes. This is Admiral Chun Wei of the UN's Leviathan. The screen split to show another human, this one older with graying hair and eyes like chips of ice. Admiral, meet High Archon Vexstar of the Stellar Hegemony. Admiral Chun nodded curtly. Archon, impressive fleet you have there. Very artistic. That word again. Artistic. As if his magnificent warships were museum pieces rather than instruments. Of war, Admiral, Vexstar managed, your vessels appeared from nowhere. How is this possible? Trade secret, I'm afraid. But since you showed us yours, Chun gestured, and one of the human ships began to change. Panels shifted along its hull, revealing weapon systems that had been completely hidden moments before. The Leviathan's primary armament consists of 6 Electromagnetic accelerators capable of launching projectiles at 0.97% light speed. Vexstar blinked. Kinetic weapons? How primitive. Chun's smile was cold. Physics is physics. Archon. Doesn't matter how pretty your shields are when a slug of depleted uranium hits them at relativistic speeds. As if to demonstrate, the human admiral turned to his tactical officer. Commander Torres, target the debris field from their earlier demonstration. Standard kinetic penetrator, minimum charge. Aye, Admiral, firing. The human ship didn't light. Up like a festival. There was no cascade of energy, no artistic display of power. Instead, there was simply a brief flicker along the vessel's spine, barely visible to the naked eye. 3 seconds later, the asteroid debris that had been drifting lazily through space simply ceased to exist. Not vaporized like the hegemony's energy weapons had done, but annihilated so completely that even the dust was gone. The projectile continues on its trajectory at 97% light speed. Admiral Chun explained conversationally. It will impact that gas giant's moon in approximately 14 minutes. I estimate the crater will be visible from here. Vexstar stared at the empty space where tons of rock and metal had been. No energy discharge, no brilliant light show, just gone. Your weapons, he said slowly, they leave no signature. That's the idea, Chun replied. Hard to dodge what you can't see coming. War Prime Kreldok leaned forward, his tactical mind finally grasping what they faced. High Archon, if their entire fleet carries such weapons, Chun seemed to read his thoughts. 24 ships, Archon. Each one carries enough kinetic ordnance to level a continent. And as you've seen, we're very good at not being noticed until we want to be. The implications crashed over Vexstar like a tidal wave. While his people had spent millennia perfecting the art of naval combat, making their ships ever more beautiful and their displays ever more magnificent, the humans had focused on one thing, killing efficiently. Why reveal yourselves? Now? He asked. Because, Admiral Chun said, and for the first time, his expression softened slightly. The galaxy is a dangerous place. And sometimes, the most beautiful things need protection from the things that hunt in the dark. As if summoned by his words, the space around them suddenly filled with new contacts. But these weren't human or Veltar ships. These were something else entirely, dark, organic shapes that moved with predatory grace. Hunters, War Prime Kreldok breathed, recognizing the ancient enemy that had plagued the galaxy's edge for centuries. The creatures had found them. Asterisk, the revelation the hunter fleet emerged from the cosmic deep like a nightmare-given form. Organic. Vessels that pulsed with their own malevolent life, each one a fusion of biotechnology and predatory instinct that had terrorized the galaxy's outer regions for centuries. Their hulls writhed with purpose, covered in what looked like scales that shifted color to match the void around them. High Archon Vexstar felt his heart's race as the sensor readings flooded in. 37 hunter ships, each one easily the size of his largest vessels, and they were moving with the coordinated precision of a pack. This is impossible, War Prime Kreldok whispered, his massive frame trembling. The hunters never venture this deep into civilized space. They fear our combined fleets. Admiral Chun's voice cut through their panic with steel-edged calm. Captain Morrison, take the Whisper to minimum safe distance. All civilian traffic is to evacuate immediately. Understood, Admiral, came the reply from the human diplomatic vessel, which began moving away with surprising speed for something that had appeared so unremarkable. Vexstar watched in growing horror as the hunter fleet spread into an attack formation he recognized from classified reports. The devouring spiral, a tactical arrangement designed to systematically strip apart enemy vessels while keeping their own losses minimal. In 3,000 years of space warfare, no civilization had successfully countered it. Admiral Chun, Vextar said, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. We must coordinate our defensive efforts. The hunters have never been defeated in open battle. Have they not? Chun's response was mild, almost conversational. Interesting. Before Vextar could ask what he meant, the hunter fleet launched their opening gambit. Streams of bioacid erupted from their forward batteries, while swarms of fighter parasites began pouring from launch bays that looked more like wounds in their hulls. The hegemony fleet responded as they had been trained, forming the grand defensive mandala, their energy shields creating overlapping fields of protection, while their plasma cannons began their measured response. It was textbook defensive warfare, executed with the precision of 3 millennia of experience. The hunters tore through it like tissue paper. Bioacid ate through energy shields as if they weren't there, while the parasite fighters proved too small and numerous for the hegemony's targeting systems to track effectively. Within minutes, 2 of Vextar's cruisers were listing badly, their crystalline hulls pocked with acid burns and swarming with parasites that were boring through their armor. All ships fall back to secondary defensive positions, Vextar commanded. But even as he spoke, he knew it was futile. The hunters had fought and defeated fleets twice the size of his own. That's when the human fleet moved. There was no grand formation, no artistic arrangement of vessels. Instead, the 24 human ships simply scattered, each one accelerated in a different direction at velocities that made Vextar instruments scream warnings about impossible physics. What are they doing? Kreldok demanded. They're abandoning formation. That's tactical suicide. Admiral Chun's voice remained steady over the communication channel. All Silence-class vessels are weapons-free. Remember, these things learn fast, so make the first shots count. What followed defied everything Vextar thought he knew about space combat. The human ships didn't engage like civilized vessels. They fought like wild animals, unpredictable, vicious, and utterly without regard for conventional tactics. One moment a hunter ship would be pursuing what appeared to be a fleeing human vessel. The next it would find itself under fire from 3 different directions as the humans used their impossible stealth capabilities to appear and disappear at will. UN's Leviathan demonstrated why Admiral Chun commanded the fleet. The massive vessel plowed straight through the center of the hunter formation, its kinetic accelerators firing continuously. But these weren't the precision shots they had demonstrated earlier. These were full salvos, dozens of projectiles per second, creating a storm of relativistic death that the hunters couldn't dodge or deflect. A hunter battleship, easily 4 times the size of the Leviathan, found itself on the receiving end of a full broadside. The kinetic penetrators struck with such force that the creature ship's bio-armor simply disintegrated, the impact creating brief new stars as matter converted to energy dot. But it was the smaller human ships that truly amazed Vextar. They moved like dancers, like fighters, each one a deadly artist painting destruction across the void. The Un's Razor appeared directly above a hunter cruiser and fired a single shot downward through its spine. The Un's Ghost materialized inside the enemy formation and unleashed a spread of kinetic torpedoes, before vanishing again like its namesake. How are they moving like that? Kreldok whispered in awe. Admiral Chun seemed to hear him despite the impossible distance, inertial dampeners, and gravity manipulation. Turns out Newton's laws are more like guidelines when you understand the physics properly. A hunter fighter swarm descended on the Unzi's Whisper, apparently mistaking the diplomatic vessel for easy prey. Captain Morrison's voice came across the channel with what sounded like genuine regret. Sorry about this, Admiral. Diplomatic immunity only goes so far. The Whisper's hull suddenly bristled with point defense systems that emerged from hidden compartments. The weapon clusters tracked and fired with inhuman precision, and in less than 10 seconds, the entire swarm was reduced to drifting debris. "Diplomatic vessel?" Vextar asked weakly. "Every human ship is a warship," Chun replied matter-of-factly. "Some are just better at pretending otherwise." The battle raged for another 20 minutes, but the outcome was never in doubt once the humans revealed their true capabilities. The hunters, for all their legendary ferocity, had never faced an enemy like this. They were adapted to fight conventional fleets with conventional tactics. The humans fought like physics had personal grievances against their enemies. When the last hunter ship fell, its biohull cooling in the void, the human fleet regrouped with the same casual efficiency they had shown throughout the engagement. No celebration, no victory displays. They simply returned to their previous positions as if they had just completed a training exercise. Admiral Chun's face reappeared on Vextar's screen, and the Archon was shocked to see that the human looked tired, not physically exhausted, but weary in a way that spoke of old battles and older pain. "Admiral," Vextar said, still struggling to process what he had witnessed, "your fleet. How is such power possible?" Chun was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Because we had to learn, Archon. Humanity didn't have the luxury of developing in peaceful space. We've been fighting. Things like the hunters since we first left our home system. But your technology, your tactics, born of necessity," Chun interrupted. "Every system we've colonized has taught us new ways to die. And every way we've learned to die, we've turned into a way to kill." Captain Morrison's voice joined the conversation. "The Whisper isn't just a diplomatic vessel, Archon. She's also our early warning system. We've been tracking that hunter pack for 3 weeks, waiting for them to make their move." The implications staggered Vextar. "You knew they were coming?" "We know where all of them are," Admiral Chun said simply. "The hunters think they're the apex predators of deep space. But there's always a bigger fish." War Prime Kreldok leaned forward, his tactical mind racing. The stories from the Outer Rim, the colonies that simply vanished, the hunter packs that disappeared without trace. "We've been hunting the hunters for 50 years, Chun confirmed. "This pack was one of the last organized fleets. There are still scattered groups out there, but nothing that poses a real threat to civilized space anymore." Vextar stared at the human admiral, seeing him clearly for the first time. This wasn't just a military commander. This was someone who had spent decades fighting monsters in the dark so that others could sleep safely. "Why reveal this now?" he asked. "You could have remained hidden. Let us assume you were nothing more than another young race with primitive ships." Chun's smile was sad and tired. "Because the galaxy is changing, Archon. New threats are emerging from beyond our borders, things that make the hunters look like house pets. When they arrive, we're going to need every ally we can get. And you believe the hegemony would make a worthy ally? Your ships are beautiful," Admiral Chun said, and this time the word carried no mockery. "They represent hope, culture, everything worth protecting. But when the darkness comes, you'll need us to stand between you and the monsters." Vextar looked out at his fleet, magnificent, artistic, sophisticated vessels that had been utterly helpless against the hunters. Then he looked at the human ships, dark and deadly, and utterly without pretense. "What do you propose?" he asked. "A partnership," Chun replied. "Your people create beauty, inspire hope, preserve culture. Let us handle the nightmares." As if summoned by his words, the Kepler station sent an emergency transmission. Long-range sensors had detected something massive moving in the space between galaxies, something that dwarfed even the largest hunter fleet. Admiral Chun sighed as he read the report. "And there's our next nightmare, right on schedule." Vextar straightened, feeling something he hadn't experienced in centuries, the desire to prove himself worthy of respect rather than simply demanding it. "Admiral Chun," he said formally. The stellar hegemony would be honored to fight alongside humanity. Welcome to the Silent Fleet, Archon, Chun replied. Try to keep up. As the combined fleets began to move toward the new threat, Vexstar realized that his people's 3,000-year reign as the galaxy's dominant power had just ended. But somehow, he felt more hopeful than he had in centuries. The humans had taught them that there was something more important than being feared. Being protected by someone who cared enough to fight the monsters in the dark. And as the silent fleet disappeared into the void, space itself seemed to exhale in relief, knowing that the Guardians were on watch once more.